Now the moment you've been waiting for. Okay, Joy's been waiting for. Just got in yesterday from the Netherlands, so you can imagine she's on a time change.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Okay, no, wait, wrong language. You know, I've been traveling through a Tower of Babel for 3 weeks, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get your languages correct, to understand the correct communications protocol. And there's a lot more to it than just the words, as all of you know who have traveled internationally. But it's really nice to see you all. What a great audience, and it's great to be back. I got back yesterday at about 1 o'clock, and I've put this together since then mostly. So I'm trusting technology, hoping it will all work out. And you know, that trip home, it was so magical. You get on this aluminum tube with 400 other people, you fly through the air for 10 hours, and all of a sudden you're back home. It's amazing. So I wanted to mention also at the end of the program, if you look at the table at the back, there is a running slideshow there, which is my entire trip, which you're not going to want to watch the whole thing, but you can get a little bit of a flavor. A lot of other trip mementos and the program from the conference, and and also a copy of the new manifesto that WILPF passed at the Congress, and also there. So I'd like to just set the stage with you a little bit so you can relate to my mindset as I did this process. On the plane, I had a choice of movies to watch, and since I was going to a conference about war and peace, of course I chose to watch Valkyrie. If anybody knows what that's about, it's about the attempted, hold on, no wait, the attempted assassination of Hitler in 1944. And another movie called Imitation Game, which was about the British breaking the code of the Nazis during World War II. So by the time I didn't even get to The Hague before I was really prepped for talking about war, and before I even landed. And I also brought 2 books to read. One of them was called In Paradise, and it was actually about a memorial trip to Auschwitz. And another one, which I have with me, I gave the other one away on the trip, it's called Grace Revealed. And it was kind of a mind blower for me because it had so many parallels to the actual trip that I was taking. It's about the Stalin's Polish deportation of 7 million Polish people. So I was reading those along the way. So from the moment, getting real ready for it. So from the moment I got to The Hague, my entire trip was about war and the consequences of it. I simply couldn't get away from it, and particularly because, as Matilda already mentioned, the week of May 1st to May 8th was the 70th anniversary of the end of the war, World War II, in Europe, VE Day. And so there were exhibitions everywhere, there were events, there were world leaders. I missed the world leaders in Gdansk, Poland by 1 day. Ban Ki-moon was there, the president of Poland, the president of somewhere else. I mean, it was mind-blowing. So in any case, the conference became kind of like an opening scene in a great big real-life melodrama for me. And it was all about war and the consequences and getting, recovering from war. And then the places that I decided to go after the conference, well, little did I know, castles. We all like castles, right? Well, castles are simply an evidence of war because castles were built to protect territory. So I went to castles, and I went to war-torn cities, and I went to death camps, and I finally went to my ancestors' lands, and that was reclaimed territory from Germany to Poland. So it was everywhere. So the question that came up for me right at the beginning was, why is there all this ongoing suffering, this ongoing war? Why? And it's really all about control. Control of territory, control of money, control of power. And everybody in this room already knows that. But maybe some of the other people watching this don't. It just seems to me, I'm kind of in a state of concern about the whole thing, because the human race just doesn't seem to be able to get along and play nice. You know, we've been trying this for thousands of years now, and in Europe, they are really the masters of war. And this last century, they've gotten a lot of help from their friends over the pond, us. So it just keeps on. So with that mindset, the conference began, and there was, I gotta do my slides here, which I've been forgetting. Hold on. Hopefully, yes. So that was about the war. So with that in mind, the very first day of the conference, we stopped at the Peace Palace, which has already been talked about by Matilda, and we had an optional day trip. And what we found when we arrived there, the very first thing that we saw was that there was a protest. And it was like, oh, okay, that's what we're here about. It was a protest by very brave Chinese people about the persecution of Falun Gong. I did not take any pictures that included their faces because I just didn't want to take any chances. So, but that was very moving, and of course we told them, go to the World Forum for the next 3 days, you'll get a lot of attention. So this day trip was to the National Flower Park, and I thought it was just going to be rows and rows of tulips, and there were lots of tulips, but it was an amazingly beautiful place, and you really got a sense of being in the Netherlands while we were there. So it was a nice distraction from all that war stuff that I had already started getting steeped in. What's that? That was a tree in front of the Peace Palace, and it has little prayers on it. And when we came back to the Peace Palace, I did a little tour of the visitor center, and I found out that the Peace Palace actually exists because of the advocacy of a woman. Surprise, surprise. Her name, it was Bertha von Suttner, and she was very much like our Jane Addams in Europe. She was kind of a peace mother. And she, as it turns out, she was the first woman in the world to get a Nobel Prize. And Jane Addams was the first one in the United States. And so that's her. She was a wealthy woman who just decided, we got to do something about this. So at the opening of the Peace Palace in 1913, she was an honored guest. But sadly, she died 1 year later on June 21st, 1914, just as World War I was beginning. And I just have a feeling that maybe it was from a broken heart, or just not being able to tolerate the fact that her work wasn't happening. And the other thing that I also saw at the front of the Peace Palace was that there was a thing called a peace flame. And in that center area there, you can see a flame which was brought together in 1999 from 7 countries and brought together to make one flame. And then all these other countries are represented around it. So there's so many ways that peace is demonstrated in a physical way, and we just need to demonstrate it more within human beings. Now, this picture is an interesting little thing. There are all these orange festoons around Amsterdam and The Hague at that time because the first day of the conference was King's Day. They still have a king, And when we started planning the conference 4 years ago, there was a queen, not a king. And her day was April 27th, or April 30th. Sheesh. And unfortunately, she abdicated, and now the King's Day is April 27th, so that was the first day of our conference. And so instead of going to the festivities, we went to our conference. But that was fine. The Netherlands, the people of the Netherlands go a little bit crazy on those days. They have lots of fun. So the World Forum is where the conference began, and there were 900 women from around the world, so it really felt powerful. But at the same time, as Matilda mentioned, it also felt like the whole rest of the world was just going along and not even knowing that this was happening, that we really weren't having any impact, I mean, even right in The Hague. So it struck me, I said, so what's the deal here? In 1915, there were 1,000 women at this conference. In 2015, there were 900. And the population of the world has what, is 10 times or 100 times, whatever. What's wrong with this picture? I had a thought that today's wealthy philanthropist women, like Jane Addams, like Bertha Van Suttner, maybe aren't bothering to do anything about peace. Maybe they've abandoned the idea of peace. Maybe they don't even believe in it anymore. And the other women, the women who suffer the most from it, they simply can't be there because they're suffering in whatever many, many ways that they are. So it was really clear to me from the beginning that we really need to start thinking and acting out of the box, doing things unexpected and not done before. So we went ahead and started the conference at the World Forum on the 27th. And even though I was so thrilled, I actually made it. It was like very, very exciting. Even though I had these misgivings about what we were doing and how it was impacting the world, I still got there and I saw all these women coming together, and I saw women who were greeting each other, looking at the women on the wall who had done all these incredible things. And some of these women, like Jane Addams, made incredible sacrifices to be and do, like all of the people in this room who have already spoken. And it's amazing what people have done. They ended civil war in Nigeria by a sex strike. Did you know that? There was a woman there who raised a heartfelt cry for the people of Yemen who are being bombed right now in their civil war. There was somebody who somehow got 2,000 pairs of shoes from Canada there to represent the violence against Canadian Indigenous women. Who knew? Really, really bad. And then there was at least one woman from Nepal who was able to stay and made a very impassioned plea regarding the quake in her country that happened the first day of the conference. And there were also women who explicitly said their lives had been threatened because of their activism, and even a woman who had been killed just 1 week before the conference and thus obviously wasn't there. So, it was clear that we really have made a lot of differences already, and we're going to continue to do so, but we're going to have to really get creative. So, the first plenary panel, well, the first thing that happened was our new office board members introduced themselves and our outgoing persons. So Madeline Reese is there, Joy from Japan, the new president, and I'm sorry, not Joy, the woman who is from Japan, and Joy, the vice president, is there. They introduced themselves, talked to us about what we were going to be doing and so forth, and during the entire time of the conference. So then we had a plenary first session and talked about how do we get to a permanent peace. And I didn't really take many notes about that because I was still kind of in shock and awe, new kind of, good kind of shock and awe. And so as we moved into the rest of the session though, this woman, Jody Williams, was such a kick. She's a anti-mine activist. And wow, is she, emphatic about things. So a lot of these sessions, and maybe all of them, are available on the web, by the way. So you can, if there's any particular one you're interested in, you can actually watch them. Yes, almost everybody who spoke was. I mean, it was amazing how many, but she's very explicit about what she has to say.
Tell me her name again.
Jody Williams.
From Vermont.
From Vermont.
The land.
So we had a couple of sessions in the morning. Landmines, yeah. And then we had a break, and we actually got to listen to this wonderful band with a female sax player, which is pretty unusual. And so that was lots of fun. And we really had short little breaks. And one of the things that they did was on the walls around the forum, they had a lot of exhibits very similar to this. And so this was the original, you can't see the whole thing there, but the original declaration at the original 1915 conference that they had up there. And at the time, I did read the whole thing, and that was the original folks. You see Jane Addams right in the middle there, sitting there in charge of the whole thing. So they had some wonderful pictures and information. So we had tea, so yeah, anybody who knows Patricia Schroeder, she's there. And it was hard to keep up with, to find people, even our 4 people, because we didn't have cell phones and, Facebook and all that stuff that was connecting us. So, but this is what the auditorium looked like when it was at capacity, pretty much. This was when one of the passionate women from Africa was speaking about something, and it was really heart-wrenching sometimes when people got up and talked about things. Especially the woman from Yemen really gave an impassioned speech. This is Robin Lloyd, who gives a little soliloquy about her grandmother, and kind of talks to from generation to generation about what's been going on in the world and what we can do about it.
Who's her grandmother?
In October.
I thought so, yeah. So, moving along, in the afternoon of that day, oh yes, and Amy Goodman, by the way, from Democracy Now! She was there, I mean really there, the whole time. She broadcast all 3 days and interviewed the Nobel Peace Prize winners. And you can see that online too. Yeah. So this panel, it was very interesting, so much so that I didn't take notes. I just listened, and sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. And then we went home that day, came back the next day, and I came in a different entrance, so I got a view of the place where we were. Pretty interesting. This one was a panel about power warring weapons, and I took a lot of notes about this one. This one I thought really hit the guts of what we're talking about. It was really about why we fight. And I'm not sure in the end if I felt hopeful or wishful, but it was definitely enlightening. Cynthia Enloe, a demilitarization expert, said that militarization is appealing even to women because it represents the need for protection and patriarchy and all that kind of we're taking care of you stuff. So Dean Peacock, one of the few men who was on the panels, said that being a man is often defined as never showing fear and being superior and being a protector of women. And we accept these false choices all the time, decade after decade. And that's despite the fact that we have constant proof of exactly the opposite. So somehow we've got to start working on that, our mindset. Why do we believe these things that we have so much proof of exactly the opposite of? Samina Nazir from Pakistan told us that 50,000 people have been killed there since 9/11, mostly by drones. 50,000. I mean, you know, you hear these numbers, and these are not things that we hear here, and you think, how is that possible? But, you know, and yet, Pakistan has become more and more militarized because of that, and that's supposed to be the solution. So, as we went along with that panel, I mean, there was more and more I could say about it. And I'm probably not going to because there's not enough time, and I'll tell you more about that another time. But at the very end, this is the woman from Nepal giving us a very impassioned plea to please support in any way you can the people of Nepal. Because it was, she had a hard time getting through saying what she had to say without crying. She managed somehow, I don't know how. And then we got to take an interesting break in the front hallway where there was a huge table stacked up with red things representing the amount of money that's spent on the military right now, which is $1.77 trillion per year. Okay, so we took that money and we started putting it into different places. And we put it in education and healthcare and other sorts of things. And it was lots of fun. We sang, and different delegations had different songs. And lo and behold, yay! There's no money left for that. That was really symbolically wonderful. Yeah, that was a great kind of cathartic sort of thing to finally be able to say, we can do this, you know, even if it's only symbolic. I love these two women. With their, can you read that?
What does it say?
I dream of
What was war?
giving birth to a child who will ask, Mother, what was war?
Where are they from? Where are they from?
I didn't get a chance to ask. Oh, and this, I'm going to turn on the sound. So it went on much longer than that, but we definitely got going. This was a quilt that was put together, an anti-drone, anti-war quilt, and it was displayed in the market, what they call the marketplace, which was a place where you could actually go and see things. And these were, I took some pictures of some of the statistics that, you know, were shown, and, you know, just to give you some idea of the numbers involved. But that 1.77 trillion is pretty, and then the other thing that they talked about in one of the sessions was all the many ways that military is affecting our lives. The toxic soil, mining, you know, all these different things that we often don't think about. So that's the marketplace. That's what that looked like, and that was really fun. People, again, this huge display of, you know, people wanting to do something differently than having war. Another session that was really amazing was this one that was led by Amy Goodman. She was the moderator, and it was about media and militarization. And I loved this. Look how close they put their country to our military base. Russia really wants war. So Amy talked a lot about the need for independent media, and, you know, really made a very good case for that. Yeah, that's beautiful. And then that evening, oh boy, did we have fun. That was the second night. There were awards that were given, and then there was a poetry person, and then there was this woman. I will never look at belly dancing the same. I have to tell you that I actually kept the how shall I say it? I did the parts of the belly dancing that weren't quite so evocative. Didn't know if we wanted to show them. And then we did rock and roll. What was that? And then we did rock and roll for the evening. And I found Jane at the very end of it and proved that we both made it till the end. So the third day was, kind of on the way down. We had a wonderful panel. We had, this was the woman from Yemen who, it turns out, she had asked for help, and we wrote a letter to all of the embassies, and then people carried this letter to the embassies right there in The Hague. And the person who took it to the U.S. embassy said they didn't want to accept it, but they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and they finally did. So it was about, hey, stop the bombing, stop the killing, blah, blah, blah. And so they were reading the letter there. And we had a session with our U.S. section, which was a little bit frustrating, actually, because the momentum kind of got stopped. But in this session, whoops, I missed him a little bit, sorry. I wanted to mention that I feel like I might have made just a little bit of difference with this ambassador representative from Ecuador, who I asked, why are you accepting Chinese oil leases in the most diverse and indigenous lands of the indigenous people? And his response was fascinating. He said, we made a deal with the Yasuni that if we, protected their land, we would get money from the rest of the world. And nobody replied. So, hey, what are we going to do? We need the money. We need the bucks. And everybody else, including the U.S., has investments from China. So what are you complaining about? So anyway, I pressured him, and I kept it up, and I said, you're ruining the reputation of your country. You've got the rights of nature in your constitution. He said, yeah, I know. And he said, all right, I will take the message back send it from Geneva back to Ecuador. We know that it's a problem, blah, blah, blah. All right. So tiny. I do have a couple more things to say, and that is I want to say that if you get a chance to listen to Madeline Reese's farewell speech at the very end, it's really very empowering, very inspiring, and very enlightening. She really summarizes it up very well. And she gave us a long list of things that we actually can do and should do. And lastly, I would like to thank, first of all, our local WILPF chapter and our national WILPF chapter for both giving me a scholarship to allow this to happen, because I wouldn't have been able to do it without that. And also to Paula, who became my house sitter and kitty sitter, and really made it possible for me to go. And even more importantly, put countless hours into this exhibit, along with the help of so many other WILPFers, and into this presentation and all the other events. Thank you, Paula.